That's something a lot of people don't know. And when they hear, oh, the Amazon is being cleared for soy, they blame it on the vegetarians and the vegans like myself who eat soy pretty much every other day or so. Hello, and welcome to the ShopLogic podcast. I am your host, Adrienne. If it's your first time listening, you might be wondering, what is this podcast all about? ShopLogic is all things pertaining to ethical consumerism. It's your source to learn how what we buy affects you, others, animals, and the planet. ShopLogic is a website, app, podcast that you're listening to, and soon to be ethical brand certifier. I discuss anything and everything we shop for, which includes, but is not limited to, food, personal care products, cosmetics, fashion, and much, much more. I don't just present problems on this podcast, I offer solutions because it's all about giving power to the consumer through transparency and awareness. It's a shopping education, if you will. I'm passionate about providing ethical insights for others and sharing what I've learned so we can make better buying choices. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing rainforests. How can consumers protect rainforests? Problematic rainforest products? Is sustainable palm oil legit? And rainforest certifications, because June 22nd happens to be World Rainforest Day. And yes, believe it or not, a lot of the things that we buy do actually come from the rainforest. No matter where you are located in the world, there are many, many products that are sourced not just from the Amazon, but rainforests all over. So first, let's do a brief overview of rainforests and why it's so important to keep them protected and preserved. Rainforests are basically the Earth's living engine. They are so alive that scientists describe them as breathing ecosystems. And despite rainforests only covering about 6 to 7% of the Earth's land, they contain over half of the world's species. And did you know that according to conservation groups, it's estimated that about 1 to 2 acres of rainforest disappear every second? That is a very gloomy statistic because that's roughly a football field every few seconds, tens of millions of acres every year globally. And how do we know this? Recent satellite monitoring from organizations like Global Forest Watch and the World Resources Institute tracks this loss in real time. My question is, why cut down rainforests when there's so much other land? And this is one of the biggest questions environmentalists ask. The answer is mostly about, no surprise, money, but also geography and politics. Rainforest soil is only valuable for short-term industry. And even though rainforest soils are often poor long-term, the land is flat enough in some regions, it's close to rivers, rich in timber, and useful for large-scale agriculture, but just for a few years. Companies often clear forests for cattle ranching, soy farming, palm oil plantations, mining, roads, dams, and logging. It's mostly about politics and economics because rainforests are in developing nations. Many rainforest nations face poverty, debt, and pressure to grow economics quickly. Therefore, those governments may prioritize exports, jobs, infrastructure, foreign investment. To some leaders, forests look like unused economic space. And there are a lot of valuable resources under the forest. Rainforests contain gold, oil, rare minerals, hardwood trees, and fertile grazing land. This creates enormous economic pressure. So yes, even though the soil is not great for crop growing, the fertile land is good for grazing livestock. And that's a great segue into my next question. What causes rainforest destruction the most? Do you know what it is? The biggest causes are the following, but at the top of the list is cattle ranching, especially in the Amazon rainforest. Why would they ever tear down rainforests, especially the Amazon, just for cows? Huge areas are burned to create pasture for beef production. Scientists estimate cattle ranching is the largest driver of Amazon deforestation. And we'll get into more about that in just a moment. The next biggest cause is palm oil, my least favorite ingredient found in so many products. And palm oil is found in candy, soap, shampoo, frozen foods, cosmetics, just to name a few. Large rainforest areas in Indonesia and Malaysia have been cleared for plantations. And Indonesia and Malaysia are specifically notorious for palm oil. So while the Amazon might be mostly for cattle and soy, the rainforests in Indonesia and Malaysia are notorious for palm oil. Logging is the next one. Some logging is legal, some is illegal. Rare tropical hardwoods sell for huge prices worldwide. And soy farming. Yes, you heard that correctly. However, much rainforest is cleared to grow soy used mainly for animal feed and livestock production. Ironically, eating more meat indirectly increases soy demand. If you're vegan or vegetarian, you can definitely use that as an argument for yet another reason to not eat animals. That's something a lot of people don't know. And when they hear, oh, the Amazon is being cleared for soy, they blame it on the vegetarians and the vegans like myself who eat soy pretty much every other day or so, who eat tofu and tempeh and miso and other soy products. It's definitely a main ingredient due to its high protein and zero cholesterol. Deforestation happening to rainforests in order to produce soy is not going to people as much as it is animal feed and livestock production. The next biggest commodity of the rainforest that destroys it would be mining and oil drilling. Gold mining can poison rivers with mercury, and oil drilling, obviously not good for the environment in any way, opens roads deep into forests, bringing more destruction afterward. But why do countries allow it instead of protecting it? Because rainforests create a difficult conflict: short-term wealth versus long-term survival. Governments now may think people need jobs ASAP. This country needs export money. Foreign companies will invest billions. And another problem, the rich versus poor countries. Many rainforest countries argue, well, wealthy nations already destroyed much of their own forests during industrialization, so why should poorer nations stay underdeveloped? And who's going to pay for conservation? This has become a major global political debate. And what was going on before all of this large-scale industrialization? For thousands of years, indigenous peoples lived in rainforests with relatively sustainable methods. They participated in selective harvesting, rotational farming, and they had deep ecological knowledge. Many indigenous communities protected biodiversity better than our modern systems. It took a bit of a turn in the 1800s and 1900s because colonial powers expanded. There was rubber extraction, timber cutting, plantations, and mining. And then it took a really big turn in the 1970s up to today. We started to see modern highways, bulldozers, and global trade accelerating this destruction dramatically. One example is the construction of highways through the Amazon opened remote forest areas to settlement and ranching. Scientists warn parts of the Amazon are shifting from rainforest into dry savanna. That means fewer trees, more fires, less rain, and massive carbon release. Did you know that just one tree in the rainforest can hold thousands of species? A single tree may host ants, fungi, birds, moss, orchids, monkeys, insects. There are some solutions and progress being made. Indigenous land protection. By protecting the indigenous territories, this is one of the most effective conservation strategies. Then we have sustainable agriculture, and those methods might include agroforestry, regenerative farming, shade-grown crops. You're probably like, what is that? If you listened to this podcast a few episodes ago, the theme was energy, coffee, caffeine, and we learned that coffee is much more sustainable for the environment if it's grown in the shade instead of out in the sun. So these shade-grown crops, that's what that means. It's not leading to deforestation as much. And another method is farming already cleared land instead of new forest. But there's also the consumer. Tips and hacks for us eco-conscious consumers. That's going to include eating less industrial beef, buy recycled paper products, avoid tropical hardwood furniture, no matter how beautiful it might be, support rainforest charities carefully researched for transparency, reduce food waste, and buy shade-grown coffee and chocolate. Satellite monitoring, as controversial as AI and this modern technology can be, modern satellites can now detect illegal logging quickly. Organizations and governments increasingly use AI and satellite alerts to monitor forests. So there's a silver lining for that. And the bigger reality, rainforests aren't just tree collections. They help regulate global climate, rainfall, biodiversity, oxygen cycles, freshwater systems. The fate of rainforests affects agriculture, weather, wildlife, and human survival worldwide. Many scientists now see rainforest protection not as optional environmentalism, but as a major part of maintaining Earth's life support system. So true. So there is my pitch for why rainforests need to be protected. So many reasons, environmentally, of course, but all of the wildlife that lives there, for the sustainability of the entire planet, for the indigenous communities. Let's move on to our consumer impact. I'm going to address questions like, what is the number one consumer purchased product that comes from rainforests? What animals are affected by these rainforest products? How can consumers protect rainforests? Well, it all boils down to the hidden cost of everyday shopping. To quickly visualize what's going on, you can imagine rainforests with towering emerald trees dripping with orchids and vines, scarlet macaws flying above misty canopies, jaguars moving silently through the shadows, and orangutans swinging between ancient trees. But now imagine chainsaws, bulldozers, smoke from fires, endless cattle pastures, and rows of monocrop plantations replacing it all. That transformation often begins with ordinary consumer products sitting in shopping carts around the world. The number one consumer product linked to rainforest destruction is palm oil. Palm oil is considered the single most widespread rainforest-linked ingredient in our consumer goods. Why is it everywhere? Why is palm oil in everything? If you are neurotic, like I am, about reading labels and the ingredients in products at the store, you will know that palm oil goes by many names and it can be found in so many things. So I'm like, what did we ever do without palm oil? And why is it everywhere? Why do we need it so badly when it is really affecting rainforests? Palm oil is cheap. That's probably the top reason. It all comes back to finance and money, of course. So companies, brands, they're going to get whatever's cheapest. But aside from palm oil being cheap, it's highly productive, it is shelf stable, it's smooth in texture, and it's used in processed foods and cosmetics, appearing in so many things like peanut butter, ice cream, instant noodles, vegan meat substitutes, soap, shampoo, lipstick, detergent, candles. The list goes on and on. It's almost as common as water being in products. Processed products and packaged products, that is. It can be anywhere. It's hard to detect. It's not just found in cosmetics. It's not just found in foods. It is across all categories of the shopping aisles. And did you know about half of packaged supermarket products contain palm oil or palm-derived ingredients in some form? Let's dial back for a moment. Why is palm oil so problematic again? Large areas of rainforests in places like Indonesia and Malaysia specifically have been cleared for palm plantations. That's the top area in the world where palm oil comes from. It comes from a lot of places, but those rainforests specifically in South Asia are affected the most. This causes habitat destruction, massive carbon emissions, peatland fires, water pollution, species extinction pressure, and labor abuses in some supply chains. Imagine a rainforest older than human civilization burned into black ash to plant perfectly straight rows of identical palm trees. That is the reality of palm oil production. And I'll get a bit more into palm oil in just a moment. But some other major rainforest-linked consumer products: beef, cattle ranching, largest driver of Amazon rainforest destruction. Huge forest areas are cleared simply to graze cattle. And even if you never buy beef directly, rainforest destruction can still be linked to products like leather shoes, car seats, fast fashion accessories, pet food, and restaurant supply chains. So my question was, where is this beef going? If beef is the biggest problem for the Amazon destruction, who is eating beef? Is it going around the world? Is it staying in Brazil? Well, the largest consumer of beef from deforested rainforest regions is Brazil itself, which eats roughly 60 to 80% of the beef it produces. But internationally, China and Hong Kong are the biggest importers, accounting for the majority of Amazonian beef exports. Next up, we have soy as another major driver of rainforest consumer products, not just rainforest linked, but destructive. But most soy is not eaten directly by vegans or vegetarians. Instead, much of it becomes livestock feed, poultry feed, and fish farm feed. Industrial meat production indirectly drives huge soy expansion into tropical ecosystems. The ultimate consumers of soy linked to rainforest deforestation globally would be meat, dairy, and egg consumers. Soy that's grown globally is processed into soybean meal, used as high-protein livestock and aquaculture feed. And who's consuming it? Livestock and poultry. Farmed animals would include chickens, especially, pigs, and dairy and beef cattle. Those are the ones that consume the vast majority of rainforest soy. Also, aquaculture. That means farmed fish, particularly salmon, are heavily dependent on this soy-based feed. So unnatural to feed fish soy. I mean, think about that. Almost as unnatural as clearing the rainforest. So who buys this soy livestock feed? China, the world's largest importer of soybeans, which is kind of ironic because you would think a lot of those Asian cultures have thousands of years of historical cuisine that involved soy. However, China imports the majority of rainforest soy to supply its massive pork and poultry industries, and the European Union, a major importer of South American soy for livestock production. Humans primarily eat this soy indirectly by consuming meat, milk, cheese, and eggs that are produced by these animals. But something a lot of us eat, cocoa. If you eat chocolate, well, chocolate from the rainforest, and a lot of it comes from the rainforest, can contribute to child labor, illegal deforestation, and wildlife habitat loss, especially in parts of the Ivory Coast and Ghana. And yes, they have rainforests. I looked it up. We might think of Africa as being hot and dry and, I don't know, maybe images of like the Sahara Desert. But yes, a lot of Africa has rainforests. And that's where a lot of our chocolate comes from. So when you are shopping, an ethical tip, look for Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, Direct Trade, and shade-grown cacao if you're going to buy chocolate. And coffee. Sun-grown industrial coffee plantations often replace rainforest ecosystems. However, shade-grown coffee helps preserve bird habitats, tree cover, soil quality, and pollinators. But ultimately, the most problematic rainforest product, environmental scientists say industrial beef production. It's destructive overall because it uses enormous amounts of land, drives Amazon clearing, produces methane emissions on top of it all because cows are a ruminant animal. That means they have multiple stomachs, which means more methane, more gas, more manure. The dirty reality of that. For ethical and eco-conscious consumers, industrial beef is often considered one of the highest impact purchasing choices. So beef is bad in so many ways, not just for the animals, of course, but for the environment. Here are some animals affected by rainforest products. Orangutans. A palm oil expansion has devastated orangutan habitat. Baby orangutans are sometimes found clinging to burned trees after forest fires. Jaguars. Yes, jaguars and other big cats live in the rainforest, like the Jungle Book. So cattle ranching fragments the Amazon rainforest, making it harder for jaguars to hunt and breed. Sloths. Roads and logging isolate tree canopies sloths depend on for movement. Toucans and macaws. Deforestation removes nesting trees and fruit sources for them. And poison dart frogs. These tiny amphibians are extremely sensitive to temperature changes, pollution, moisture loss. Rainforest clearing can wipe out entire local populations. So it's no wonder so many endangered animals originate in rainforests. That's not the only reason a species goes endangered, but with this type of destructive behavior, how can that not happen in the future? But how did this happen historically? Well, there was the colonial extraction era. Beginning centuries ago, European empires extracted rubber, sugar, timber, spices, and gold from tropical regions with little regard for ecosystems or local people. Industrial agriculture explosion occurred in the 20th century. In the 1900s, we saw global demand for cheap commodities, roads expanding into forests, and corporations industrializing tropical farming. Rainforests increasingly became viewed as just unused land. Our current globalization accelerated consumption. Modern supply chains disconnected consumers from environmental consequences. That is why it is all about transparency and awareness. Someone buying cheap burgers, fast fashion, processed snacks, cosmetics may never realize they are connected to tropical deforestation. I didn't even realize that until preparing for this episode. How can ethical and vegan consumers protect rainforests? Eat lower on the food chain. Reducing your industrial meat consumption, or scratching it entirely, dramatically lowers rainforest pressure. Plant-focused diets often use less land, require less soy feed, and produce fewer emissions. You can also buy certified products. Look for certifications like Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, and FSC certified wood. No system is perfect, but they can reduce harm. Avoid ultra-processed foods. Not just for your health, but the more processed a product is, the more likely it's going to contain palm derivatives, industrial soy, and very complex supply chains, where a lot of accountability could be lost. Whole foods often mean lower impact, not just on our health, but for animals and the planet, and the laborers, the whole supply chain. Also, support Indigenous rights. Studies consistently show Indigenous managed lands often have lower deforestation rates. Buy less fast fashion. Leather, rayon, and viscose and synthetic textile supply chains can contribute to rainforest damage. Instead, choose durable clothing, secondhand items, ethical brands, and repair some of the things that you own before throwing them in the garbage. Choose shade-grown coffee and ethical chocolate. Those systems preserve more biodiversity. Here are some consumer tips and hacks. If you are an ingredient detective, like myself, you are going to want to watch out for palm oil, which hides under many names like sodium lauryl sulfate, palmate, or really anything with palm, like the word palm in it, but not really date palms. That's a different type of palm, but some complicated thing you've never heard of that has palm in the beginning, middle, or end of the name. That's probably referring to palm oil. Glyceryl stearate and cetyl alcohol. That's CETYL. Those ingredients ring a bell because I have seen a lot of those in toiletries, soap, cosmetics, a lot of hygiene products. So yes, products with fewer ingredients often have simpler supply chains, which are easier to track. There's more accountability, more transparency. What is the innovation and progress happening? Well, the most exciting thing is lab-grown and precision fermentation foods. Scientists are developing cultivated meat, animal-free dairy proteins, fermented fats and oils. These may reduce land pressure dramatically. If an argument against lab-grown foods is, oh, that's just so unnatural, yes, so is clearing the rainforests. So lab-grown, as I've talked about in a couple other episodes, lab-grown products are really going to be the way of the future. It's going to be beneficial in so many ways. I mean, first and foremost, companies and brands are going to care about money, and it's going to be saving them financially. If it's grown in a lab, there's more guarantee that that product is going to turn out. It doesn't depend on the weather, for instance, and they replicate it in a way that it is identical to the original thing. It's going to save the environment because we're not going to use as much land. It's going to be less strain, less water intensive, not emitting as much carbon, and using significantly less energy. And it's going to save a lot of animals from being harmed and slaughtered. Yes, lab-grown foods might be a little unnatural, sure, but think of how unnatural the world is with all of the unnatural numbers of livestock animals that are bred onto this planet, how unnatural it is to tear down a rainforest. Yeah, so I'm going to side with lab-grown. The big takeaway here is rainforest destruction is not caused by one villain alone. It's driven by global consumption, cheap commodity demand, weak protections, inequality, industrial agriculture. But consumers still have a real influence. Every purchase can either reward destructive systems or support ethical alternatives. For eco-conscious, vegan, and ethical consumers, rainforest production often comes down to three powerful ideas. Buy less, buy thoughtfully, and support systems that value forests more alive than destroyed. What are some everyday products that come from these rainforests? In the foods and ingredients category, we have chocolate. As previously mentioned, they're from cacao trees grown in West Africa and South America, commonly found in candy bars, hot cocoa, cookies, protein bars, vegan desserts. Coffee, one of the world's biggest rainforest-linked commodities. And if you buy that shade-grown coffee that's more eco-friendly, it can actually help preserve rainforest habitats for birds and insects as well. Bananas. Commercial banana farming has historically caused major rainforest clearing in Latin America. Vanilla. Real vanilla comes from tropical orchids grown mainly in rainforest climates like Madagascar. And spices, believe it or not, many popular spices originated in tropical forests, including cinnamon, black pepper, nutmeg, cloves, and ginger. In terms of fruit, we have mangoes, pineapple, papaya, acai, passion fruit, coconut, bananas, and avocados. Large-scale monoculture farming for these crops often destroys native habitats, drains local water sources, and relies heavily on chemical pesticides. So if you buy those things, especially the coffee, spices, fruits, maybe, you might want to reduce your consumption, would be the first tip. And if you're still going to buy things like bananas, which are very frequently bought, found in almost every kitchen worldwide, make sure they are certified in some way. I try to back off of avocados and coconut anyway, and I don't really eat exotic fruits like papaya and acai. Mangoes, sometimes yes, but all in all, those foods are pretty easy to avoid entirely or really cut back on. One that is almost impossible to avoid is palm oil. It is the ingredient hidden everywhere. And don't lose hope because it's found in so many products, because it's not about trying to be perfect here and 100% palm oil free with what we buy, but to really reduce it and be aware of it. So if you do see a product that says palm oil free, you can snatch that up knowing that the alternative likely contains palm oil. Palm oil is one of the most important, yet controversial, rainforest products. Also found in chips, ice cream, peanut butter, instant noodles, soap, shampoo, lipstick, vegan butter, candles, laundry detergent. Palm oil appears in half of packaged supermarket products globally. And rainforest wood. Do you have any in your home? Common rainforest woods are going to include mahogany, teak, rosewood, and ebony. They might appear in luxury furniture, hardwood floors even, musical instruments, boats, and decorative carvings. Rubber products, also very hard to avoid entirely. Natural rubber originally came from the Amazon forest. It's going to be used in tires, shoes, gloves, yoga mats, and elastic materials. I did another podcast episode a few back that was all about yoga. I discussed many ethical yoga brands to choose specifically for those mats. And just because it has rubber doesn't mean it's entirely bad, just as long as it was sourced sustainably. Beauty and personal care ingredients. Many of our trendy natural beauty ingredients come from rainforests. Common ingredients might include shea butter, cocoa butter, coconut oil, acai oil, Brazil nut oil, and a name I cannot say, cacao butter. I've never seen it on a label. I'm not sure what that is. CUPUAC with a little squiggle thing under it, U. All of the aforementioned ingredients are going to appear in things like lotion, soap, shampoo, lip balm, vegan skincare even, and hair products. All skincare, not just vegan skincare. But I'm trying to say that just because it's vegan doesn't mean it is devoid of these bad ingredients. Just because something's vegan does not mean that's going to cover all bases, because in this case, it's affecting wildlife. So you might be eating, say, a coconut, which is obviously vegan, it's a plant, thinking, oh, that didn't harm any animal, but it could have harmed the habitat in which they live, which is going to affect them dramatically. Did you know there are even medicines from rainforests? Rainforests happen to be one of the Earth's largest medicine libraries. In fact, modern medicines linked to rainforest plants include treatments for cancer, malaria, heart disease, and pain relief. Scientists estimate many rainforest plant species have never even been studied yet. A lot of paper products can come from the rainforest. Those rainforest trees can end up in toilet paper. Wow, that's the saddest thing of all. Paper towels, packaging, and printer paper. So you're going to want to look for a certification from an organization like Forest Stewardship Council. That's FSC. I know you've seen it on pencils, on paper, on toilet paper rolls. FSC, thankfully, is very common. You could look for that. The label kind of looks like a check mark with a tree and like a division symbol. I know that sounds strange, but that is FSC. Or it could also be the Rainforest Alliance certification. That one is the tree frog. Why rainforest products matter? So just because it comes from the rainforest doesn't necessarily automatically make it bad. The issue is how it's produced. Sustainable production can protect biodiversity to some degree, support indigenous communities, preserve carbon storage, support fair labor, and reduce animal habitat loss. However, unsustainable production can drive deforestation, cause wildlife extinction, increase climate change, exploit workers, and pollute rivers and soil. So all in all, you're going to want to look for those certifications, buy less processed food, choose shade-grown coffee and chocolate, avoid fast furniture, support indigenous-led conservation. And there is hope and progress. Lab-grown cocoa is another thing that's being researched. Deforestation-free supply chains are expanding. More vegan brands now disclose their sourcing because they realize their customers care about that. Satellite monitoring catches those illegal logging operations faster than ever. And reforestation projects are growing. Consumers have way more influence than they think because global companies respond very strongly to buying habits and public pressure. That is what this podcast is all about. Let's dive into palm oil for just a moment here, because there is quite a few things to discuss, not just it being controversial, it's everywhere. It creates a very difficult question, which is, should you avoid palm oil entirely, or could ethical palm oil be the lesser evil? And of course, the answer is complicated. My perspective is to avoid it as much as possible, and there are certainly lots of palm oil-free products out there. It doesn't really have to be used in so many of these things, but remember, they're using it because it's cheap, and palm oil actually comes from the fruit of the African oil palm tree. So these trees are from Africa. They're not even supposed to be in Asia and South America. And there are actually two common oils. One is palm oil, that's from the fleshy fruit, and palm kernel oil, which comes from the seed or kernel. It became globally dominant because it's cheap, it's versatile, shelf stable, it's a semi-solid at room temperature, and it creates a much higher yield compared to other vegetable oils. So you can see the appeal. It's going to be found in, and sorry if this is a bit redundant, some of these ingredients are repeating themselves, peanut butter, chocolate, ice cream, chips, instant noodles, vegan meat, bread, pizza dough, margarine, Nutella style spreads, protein bars, cereal, microwave popcorn, fast food frying oils. Here are more sneaky ingredient names, aka palm oil, vegetable oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, glycerol stearate, palmitate, cetyl alcohol, stearic acid. In our beauty and personal care products, it's going to pop up in shampoo, soap, toothpaste, lotion, lipstick, deodorant, detergent, candles, makeup, even vitamins. A single cosmetic product can contain dozens of palm-derived ingredients. Wow, that is crazy. Why do companies use palm oil instead of something else? Well, it's efficient. Palm oil is going to produce more oil on less land, and that's essentially what makes it cheaper. Comparing it to soy, coconut, sunflower, and rapeseed oil, palm oil is going to produce more oil per acre, which means low cost, less farmland needed, higher profits, more stable texture and products. This is why companies love it. And I get the one environmental aspect that is good for palm oil is that it creates more per acre by using less land. Why is palm oil controversial? Huge areas of rainforests in Indonesia and Malaysia were cleared for plantations. This destroyed habitat for orangutans, tigers, elephants, and rhinos. And that, I think it's in Indonesia, is like the world's only rainforest where it is a habitat for elephants, tigers, and monkeys, or orangutans in this case. So very, very unique. Very sad for the animals, but also another factor is child labor and exploitation. Those things have been reported through investigations which have documented labor abuses on some of these palm oil plantations, including forced labor, child labor, wage exploitation, and dangerous pesticide exposure. So how did palm oil end up in everything? Being that it was traditionally in West Africa for centuries, it expanded globally around the 1980s because there were trans fat bans. Companies needed alternatives to partially hydrogenated oils. Palm oil worked perfectly because it is naturally semi-solid. Cheap global supply, as we've talked about, massive plantation expansion lowered prices, and the processed food boom. Ultra-processed food manufacturing exploded worldwide. Cosmetics industry growth. Palm derivatives became key ingredients in surfactants and emulsifiers. Is palm oil always bad? I mean, I'm going to say yes, but it's a complicated debate. The ethical dilemma here: if the world stopped using palm oil overnight, more land might be needed for soy or coconut oil. More habitat could be destroyed elsewhere. Some substitutes have lower yields. For instance, coconut oil may threaten island biodiversity, and soy expansion can drive deforestation too. So the real issue is often how palm oil is produced. You might have heard or seen some sustainable palm oil certifications. Are those legit? The main certification is going to come from the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, RSPO. I believe their symbol is an orangutan. They are criticized for weak standards. Enforcement is inconsistent, some certified suppliers are still linked to deforestation, and labor abuses can still occur. Critics say sustainable does not always mean really sustainable. It's kind of like, what's the point? If it's an unavoidable ingredient in a particular type of product, and I have the option for responsible palm oil versus just basic uncertified palm oil, obviously I'm going to choose the one that's had to pass more tests and check off more boxes in terms of ethics. However, if I cannot buy palm oil entirely, I'm not going to. But also, I don't necessarily want to buy a lot of other oils like the coconut oil, as mentioned, or soy oil. All in all, just less oil. Some experts still support this sustainable, quote unquote, sustainable palm oil. Many conservation scientists believe improving palm oil is more realistic than eliminating it. Are there palm oil free brands? Yes. And if you check out the ShopLogic app, it is free. You can find it and save it to your phone. It's on my Linktree. You could find my Linktree link on this podcast episode in the description, also on social media, things like that. It will take you to the ShopLogic app, which I created. It's essentially a database, and I always try to include as much as I can, whether or not that brand uses palm oil. But here are the brands that use the most palm oil. In the food and beverage category, we have Unilever. Ugh, I can't stand them. It's the world's largest corporate buyer of palm oil. They use it in Ben & Jerry's, Hellmann's, and Knorr. Mondelez International, they're known for Nabisco, Oreo, and Ritz. Nestle uses palm oil heavily in Kit Kat, Nesquik, and Coffee Mate. Ferrero famously relies on palm oil for Nutella and Ferrero Rocher. And PepsiCo utilizes palm oil for Frito-Lay snacks and Quaker Oats. General Mills, even, is a heavy user of palm oil in Cheerios, Nature Valley, and Betty Crocker. Personal care and cleaning. This is where it comes up for me the most because I try not to buy so many processed things. And if I do buy a bag of chips or something, I really check hard for palm oil ingredients. But personal care is where they get me. We have Procter & Gamble. Also not a fan. They use palm oil derivatives in soap and shampoos under brands like Pantene, Head & Shoulders, Olay. Colgate Palmolive relies on it for dish soap, deodorant, and toothpaste. Reckitt Benckiser uses palm oil in cleaning supplies like Lysol and Finish. What's also a frustrating side note is when we have these large parent companies, so to speak, like Procter & Gamble and Unilever and Nestle, because they go by many names in their child companies, if you will. They are the umbrella, oversee, and own so many other brands that might come across as eco-friendly or vegan or whatever you're searching for. You can't necessarily trust that particular brand because their parent brand might be destructive in some way. So on the app, I also include what the parent company is and if it's a good one or bad one for lots and lots of brands, food, personal care, all of it. What can technically replace palm oil then? Here are some potential alternatives. Coconut oil. The pros would be it's a natural image. Cons, lower yield, biodiversity concerns. Shea butter, the pros are community-based sourcing, but the cons, it's expensive. Sunflower oil, the pros, it's a familiar crop. Cons, it needs more land. Olive oil, pros, less tropical deforestation. Cons, not suitable for all products. Algae oils, the pros, innovative. Cons, expensive, limited scale. Precision fermentation fats, pros, future tech. Cons, it's an emerging, not really out there yet industry, but it's coming. The innovation and progress, this lab-grown and fermented oil. Companies are developing fermented fats, yeast-grown oils, algae-based oils, cultivated lipid technologies. These could all reduce rainforest pressure dramatically in the future. Hope it gets here soon. Some more tips and hacks for the ethical consumer. Look for palm oil free, avoid ultra-processed foods, buy fewer disposable cosmetics, support refill systems, read ingredient labels carefully, support transparent brands, push for stronger corporate accountability, vote for stronger environmental laws, and support rainforest conservation groups. Palm oil is not just a story about an ingredient, it's about global consumption, cheap manufacturing, colonial trade history, corporate supply chains, labor rights, biodiversity, climate change, and our consumer responsibility. The future may depend less on whether palm oil exists and more on whether humanity is willing to stop treating rainforests as disposable. On to our final topic, certification. What agencies certify products to protect rainforests? What do these certifications indicate? We'll get right into it. The modern grocery store is going to be full of tiny green frogs, leaf logos, palm trees, and sustainability badges, but what do they actually mean? For us consumers, we are trying to detect and prevent deforestation, wildlife extinction, exploitative labor, illegal logging, unsustainable palm oil, and climate change. But not all labels are equal. Some are controversial. First, we have the Rainforest Alliance. You might have seen this certification. It's a tree frog. It's one of the most recognizable rainforest certification groups in the world. They work to reduce deforestation, protect biodiversity, improve farmer livelihoods, promote sustainable agriculture, and fight against abusive labor. Yes, that little green frog seal is what to look for there. You might see it on coffee, chocolate, tea, bananas, palm oil, and paper products. It generally means it met standards related to forest protection, reduced pesticides, water conservation, wildlife habitat protection, worker safety, and traceability. Their criticisms: the certification does not always mean deforestation-free. Some certified farms still use pesticides. Labor violations can still occur. Audits are imperfect. Large corporations can still qualify. But activists call it better than conventional farming, just not perfect. Then the World Wildlife Fund. This is going to be a panda logo. They work on kind of the same thing: conservation for wildlife, rainforests, ocean, climate issues, sustainable supply chains. They're involved with palm oil initiatives, fishery standards, and climate-friendly agriculture. And my only complaint about this is that I have seen that PANDA, World Wildlife Fund, badge on a lot of meat and dairy products. So one of its aims is to support wildlife, as in don't harm it, but yet it's on a package of animal products, the animals that have been exploited and slaughtered. I do not personally take that one as seriously. And the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, RSPO, it usually means reduced deforestation, better labor, less destruction on the habitats, but this can still involve orangutan habitat loss, peatland destruction, carbon emissions, human rights abusers. So yeah, also not really a fan of that one. The FSC, that's a good one. They're going to cover paper, wood, furniture, packaging, toilet paper, bamboo products. It means forests were managed sustainably, indigenous rights were considered, logging impacts were reduced, and wild habitats receive some protection. They don't really have any criticisms. If we know that fair trade certification, we are thinking fair wages, worker protection, ethical sourcing, small farmer support. But it actually overlaps with rainforest protection because poor farmers are more likely to clear forests for survival, and fair pricing can reduce pressure to destroy ecosystems. So that's why it's great to pay a little extra and give people reasonable paychecks. So no certification is perfect. You have to look for organic, fair trade, FSC, Rainforest Alliance, and transparent sourcing. My aim with ShopLogic is to create a certification so that it encompasses a lot of these features, because it is time consuming and hard on the brain to try to remember all of these things. Oh, it has to be organic, fair trade, like all of this stuff. It's a lot when you're trying to quickly shop. So yes, rainforest certifications are imperfect, but they exist because consumers demanded change. Every purchase that we make becomes a vote for industrial destruction or more sustainable systems. The most powerful ethical consumers are the ones who stay informed, read labels carefully, avoid overconsumption, support transparency, push companies to improve, and even our small choices can help protect ancient forests, indigenous communities, endangered wildlife, and global climate stability. Well, that was our episode for today, all about the rainforest. I hope you learned something new and now have a better idea of what to look for, what to avoid. Thank you so much for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe and follow and all that good stuff on social media. I hope you will join me next time. Bye.